What's going on, guys? It's Tetrosphere, and today I do want to talk about the Dracotail, or aka Dragontail, archetype coming soon to us in the Justice Hunters deck build pack. And it's a deck type that I've been, playing around with for a bit, and it has a lot of different splash engine options. You can play it with Fiendsmith, you can play it with Magistus, you can play it with. I've been playing it with Azamina, you can play it with Chimera. There's all kinds of things you can do with it, which I think is inherently one of the more interesting things about the deck, but in general, just like the archetypes build, I think definitely is worth discussion, and I think that it's something I wanted to make a video about and just show why I like the deck and why I think you guys, my audience, might like the deck. Because I feel like this deck, at least as far as its in archetype card design goes, is basically everything that I thought, or not I thought, but everything I wanted Traptrix to be, but in a much more powerful and like modern package, as well as just being a lot more consistent and being a lot more concise. So what I mean by that is, well, let's talk about what makes it more powerful. Obviously, it's like a 2025 archetype. It's going to be more powerful than Traptrix. The extenders are spells, so they're faster. Only 2 of the interruptions are traps, but they're very powerful traps that also replace themselves. Whereas with Traptrix, that was only happening if you had specifically Sarah on the field. But not only do they replace themselves in the sense of you drawing a card, but they also recur themselves, which with Traptrix you needed something like Dionea or Kalaria to do. Unlike Traptrix, obviously, it has turn 0 plays in the form of Phimena. So it's just like... But why am I even comparing these things to Traptrix in the first place? Is because the way that these cards interact with the board is through removal. And the removal is very similar to Traptrix in the sense that it's like destroying monsters one at a time. There's no big, wide, play that just completely wipes a board. You're playing really narrow. You're forcing your opponent to play really narrow, which to me was always the Traptrix game plan anyway. But now we have these dragons and spellcasters to do it with. So it's also a lot more consistent than Traptrix because you still have 6 normal summons, which Traptrix also had at least 6 normal summons, maybe even 7, 8, or 9. But in addition to that, you have 6 spells, which are also starters, which Traptrix just could never do. And even if Traptrix did have certain kinds of extenders that maybe could get you into engine, like sub packages or generic rank 4 tools to get into Pinguicula and get started, the spells don't use your normal summon. They're not adding bricks to your deck. They're actually good draws. So that's just another advantage it has over Traptrix while maintaining the same sort of game plan. And like I said, it's really concise. So with Traptrix, sometimes your opening play was make Sarah, set 4, pass. And that's obviously super concise and a super nice way to play, and you feel really good about that. But sometimes you have to make Pinguicula, make Rafflesia, go through some reset with Dionea, try to recover some resources, all in the same play or in the same turn. Whereas with this deck, even though I would consider both control strategies, this deck does it in even fewer actions than Traptrix. Ideally, you are opening Rahu and whatever other monsters you need, and you're making Altharion, and you're going to have Altharion, 2 of these traps set, and Phimena in hand, and you're going to pass. And this can literally all be achieved off just resolving Rahu. So it's very concise in the sense that, like Traptrix, it has very few actions. I would say it even has fewer actions than Traptrix. But each action is so much more powerful than each individual Traptrix action. But again, I want to make it very clear that I feel like it still has the spirit of that deck. I think they play very similarly. So let's get into how this deck actually plays, right? I have all these cards here. What are they actually doing? So many of you probably already know what these cards do, but just to be safe for those who don't, you do have 5 main deck monsters, 2 spells, 2 traps, and 2 extra deck monsters. The main deck monsters are Dracotail Phimena, who is a level 5. You would not normal summon her. She is a hand trap. During either player's main phase, you can discard her to fusion summon any dragon or spellcaster. Dracotail Lucius is your normal summon, just like the Stratos type effect. You normal summon Lucius, and then you add any Dragontail or Dracotail monster from deck to hand. And then you have Dracotail Mulier, who is a normal summon, and on normal summon, or not on normal summon, just in general has a quick effect on field to perform a fusion summon of a Dracotail monster. And then you have these two other monsters here, which are typically one-ofs, Pan and Urgula. Pan has an effect to destroy a monster when it's used as fusion material, and Urgula will destroy a spell or trap. They also have some recursive effects. Urgula will allow you to target a spellcaster Dracotail, put it back in your hand, and put Urgula back in deck. And then Pan, let me just refresh myself on the details here. If a face-up fusion monster you control is destroyed by an opponent's card effect while this card is in the grave, place this card on the bottom of the deck, and if you do, special summon a non-fusion Dragontail monster from grave. So that doesn't really come up very often, at least in my testing, but if it did, you'd probably use it to revive like Mulier from grave, and then fusion summon with Mulier. So that's an option as well, but that's pretty niche. I really don't have that come up very often. The extra deck monsters are Grammel and Altharion. Grammel is any Dracotail monster plus any one monster in the hand, and Altharion is any Dracotail monster plus one or more monsters from hand. They both have effects to revive themselves when two monsters are sent to the grave at the same time while they're in the grave, except during the damage step. Grammel has a bonus effect where once per turn, as a direct response to any other Dracotail effect you activate, you can target and pop an opponent's card. And Altharion, when it's fusion summoned, can target monsters in either field or graveyard up to the number of monsters from hand that were used as fusion material and bounce those cards. In addition, all of the Dracotail main deck monsters have an effect when used as fusion material and sent to grave to set a Dracotail spell or trap directly from deck. You have Kitu Dracotail, which will add a Dracotail monster from deck to hand. Then, if your opponent controls a monster, you can also perform a fusion summon of a dragon or spellcaster. So that's not even locked into Dracotails. Any dragon or spellcaster fusion, you can perform that summon at resolution of adding if your opponent controls a monster. And then you have Rahu Dragontail, which is quite similar to your branded fusion, except this one is specifically Dracotail fusion monsters. And keep in mind that both Dracotail fusion monsters require at least one monster in hand. So you will need Rahu plus a monster in hand. Any monster, it can be a hand trap, to actually resolve this effect. And then you have the traps, which are both extremely powerful. You have Dracotail Horn, which is a compulsory evacuation device of any face-up attack position monster. It does target. And then you can place any Dracotail card on the bottom of the deck, draw a card, and that card is from grave or banishment. And then Flame, same thing. After its resolution, you can bottom deck any Dracotail card from grave or banish, draw a card. This will target and negate a face-up spell on the field. So what does a turn look like with these cards? Like, what are we actually doing here? There's quite a few power plays you can do, and it's really modular depending on what you open. And I think that is sort of what I think excites me about this deck design is, and again, it's kind of what reminds me of Trap Tricks, is you have a ton of 2 or 3 card combos. You don't really have any 1 card combos, but you have all these different combinations of 2 or 3 cards that can do a lot. And even what you might consider garnets in Pan or Urgula, they don't really do anything. They don't even really feel bad to draw, especially going second. So going second, just while I mention it, if you draw Pan or Urgula, let's just say in this case it's Pan, plus Phimena, plus literally any other monster. It can be a hand trap. Here, I'll grab a hand trap real quick. Ash Blossom. During your opponent's main phase, you can discard Phimena, fusion summon. We'll say, it depends on what you need, whether it's a bounce or a pop, but say it's a pop you want. You'll fusion summon Grammel using Pan and Ash Blossom from hand. You'll go Chainlink 1 Pan to set a Dracotail spell or trap and pop a monster. And then if they don't have a response, you'll go Chain Link to Grammel to target and pop any card. Or if you really want this hand trap, you could do the same thing, but instead you're going to make Altharion, and you fuse with 2 monsters from hand. So you can go Altharion, target this Ash Blossom, and any card on field to return the Ash Blossom back to your hand and compulsory an opponent's monster. And this is all done on your opponent's turn going second. It just, it's fine mana, any Dracotail name. You could do this with Pan to pop a card. You could do this with Mulier to negate an opponent's face-up monster. Or you can do this with Urgula to pop a spell trap. It's especially powerful, obviously, if you draw like 3 of them. If you have Fimena, Mulier, and Urgula, for instance, you go Fimena, Fuse, Mulier, and Urgula into Altharion. Altharion can bounce too. Urgula will pop a spell trap. Mulier will negate a face-up monster. And all the while, keep in mind, these 2 will set your follow-up. It could be Rahu Kitu. It could be Hail or Horn plus, Tail, whatever. Whatever you feel like you need. And these are going second, turn 0 plays. Let alone, if you go first, your ideal opener is honestly probably just 1 action. You are probably going to want like Rahu plus anything. It doesn't matter. We'll just say it's Pan. You could go Rahu, Fusion Summon from deck. You will use... From deck, we'll use Fimena. And then remember, any monster from hand. But in this case, we'll just say it's Pan. We'll use Fimena from deck and Pan from hand to make Altharion. And then on resolution, Pan effect to set, Fimena effect to set. And then you can go Altharion effect, target Fimena, to return Fimena to your hand. So that way you still have her as a hand trap. You can set your 2 traps. And then you still have Fimena plus your other 3 cards in hand and your 2 trap interactions. And that's basically your most basic opener. And to be honest, depending on what your other 3 cards were, if they were good hand traps like Ash, whatever, you can just pass on this and feel pretty good about it. Or if your hand, you feel like it's pretty weak, maybe really engine heavy, and you want to establish more field presence, instead of setting one of these traps, you can set Kitu. Keep in mind you haven't normaled yet with Rahu. So you can go ahead and activate Kitu to add Mulier. Now you can normal summon Mulier, and you can either fuse again now or save it for your opponent's turn. If you fuse again now, you can use Mulier plus, the Ash again, or maybe you had like one of the Garnets. Like maybe you had Urgula as one of your 3 other cards. You can fuse with Mulier and Urgula from hand. Now you're going to get to set your other trap, and you can set some follow-up in the form of another Kitu. And you still have Fimena to perform another summon, which, keep in mind, the monster from hand for the Dracotail fusions can be any monster. So even with just Altharion on board, Fimena and any hand trap on your opponent's main phase, you can Fimena, use Altharion and Ash to make Grammel, or again, if you'd rather have the bounce and the extended pop, make a second Altharion. And that's why I think it's important to play 2 and 2. Because that way you just kind of always have these options. And that's just your monster interactions. Like I said, you have these traps. You have a compulsory, and you have a spell negate. Both of them let you put anything back. So say we activate Flame first. We can put Kitu back, draw a card, so now we potentially do another monster to fuse with. And then, this goes to grave at whatever point later in the turn, maybe we activate Horn. Horn can put Flame back, draw a card, and you have this infinite loop. And that is one of the problems of this deck, actually, is when both of these traps get stuck in grave. Because both of these traps are negatable by Purge, Ash, and Go Spell. So you really do need to be wary of that and understand that recycling these traps is not granted. And that's why personally I'm on the King of the Swamp build and I'm teching Blue Eyes Tyrant Dragon. So that way I can swing and reset one of these if they both get trapped in grave. Because that's a problem with the deck. The deck does have weaknesses. I'm definitely not trying to stand for this deck as if it could not possibly be, defeated, because it definitely has weaknesses, but the weaknesses feel very fair and very manageable, which I think is in stark contrast to like the weaknesses of the decks we have now, where the weaknesses all just kind of feel like blowouts, where basically you just pass after you get drolled, or Lancia'd, or whatever else. If you're playing Memento and you get like shifted still in the year 2025, you don't. This deck also passes the shifter, to be fair, but we have that limited now, so not much of an issue. But your typical fair interactions, your 1-for-1 hand traps like your Ash Blossoms and your Ghost Bells, are what feel really good against this deck. Droll does not feel good against this deck. Nibiru does not feel good against this deck at all. It's probably never going to be live. Imperm can be okay if my only way to engine was like Lucius or Mulier, but that's pretty rare. But it is a thing. It can lose to an Imperm or Valier. It can lose to field removal, especially going second, because like I said, in your opponent's turn, you're likely trying to set your follow-up if you find mana. And if you set like Rahu and Kitu, they can stay in main phase and get rid of these before you have an opportunity to use them if they have a way to do so. Like, I don't know, like something like Detonator or any kind of field removal, before you have a chance to actually respond and utilize your follow-up that you set off by mana, it can go away. So the deck definitely has weaknesses, but I think they're very healthy weaknesses. I think they're fair weaknesses to manage. Let me go ahead and shuffle this up a bit with some real cards, and let's just do a quick test hand. Like I said, I am playing the Azamina build. This wasn't necessarily meant to be a deck profile, just like a quick overview of the archetype, its game plan, what it tries to do. And that's going to change slightly depending on what you're splashing it with. Like I said, some people are playing it with Fiendsmith. There's Magist. I think Magistus is like the big one over in the OCG. There's also like Primite. I just like Azamina because I feel like it's a nice, small little card count that you can just kind of throw in there, and it just kind of gives you like an Omni Negate that you can recur, which can kind of help solve some of the deck's problems and help insulate your plays against like Ash Blossom. Because Ash Blossom does hurt. Like I said, this deck does have weaknesses. It's not for nothing. All right, let's see what we got here. All right, so we've got Pan, Sinful Spoils of the White Forest, Kitu, Ghost Bell, and Lucius. So, what do we want to do here? I think we're going to go ahead and start off with Kitu Dragontail, or Dracotail. And I think we are going to add to hand Fimena. And then we're going to normal summon Lucius and attempt effect to add. Now, the reason I did this was because now I have Fimena to dodge like an Imperm or Veiler, because she's a quick effect to fuse. So Lucius is likely going to resolve, except for in the case of exactly Ash Blossom. But if they had Ash Blossom, they were going to Ash the Kitu, not this. So we'll go Lucius to add. And we will add Mulier. So now right here, I think we go Fimena to fuse. And we are going to use Lucius from field. And in this case, it doesn't really matter, Mulier or Pan. So here's what you want to think about. This might be matchup dependent. What you're doing blind might, differ. Basically, what's about to happen here is whichever one of these you use, it's going to be this plus Lucius. And then Altharion is going to summon out. Lucius and whichever one of these other two is going to set our 2 traps. Or Rahu if we wanted to extend, but in this case I don't think we do. We'll just set our 2 traps. And basically what I'm driving at here is with Pan versus Mulier in this hand, is whichever one you use now, you won't get or I mean, not won't, but like you won't necessarily have on your opponent's turn. So the significance of that is, say we use Muller, Eltharion effect to add 5 mana back to hand. Now when we fuse with 5 mana on our opponent's turn, our named material is Pan. So for example, it would be Pan plus Ghost Bell or Pan plus Eltharion into, say Grammel. We're going to get the Pan pop effect. But if we wanted the negate instead, we would use Pan on our turn 1. So that way Muller stays in hand. And then when we go 5 mana to fuse on the opponent's turn, it'd be Muller plus Eltharion or Muller plus Ghost Bell. And then Muller would have the negate effect. But let's say we didn't want to set Flame yet. Just for the sake of going through some motions. Let's, we'll say we used Pan. And Eltharion returned 5 mana to hand. And like I said, instead of Flame here, we'll say we set Rahu Dragontail. What we could do here now, and actually, if we were going to go this route, if we were going to go Rahu, we wouldn't bounce 5 mana back to hand with Eltharion. We would bounce Pan. And here's why. Because if we go Rahu, we can use whatever from hand. We can even use the Ghost Spell if we don't think it's very good in the matchup, or if it's blind, probably just use one of the names. But what we're going to do is we're going to make a Grammel using Urgula from deck. And we'll say we want the Ghost Spell. We'll use Muller from hand. So now we have Muller effect and Urgula effect. We're going to set some follow-up and our Flame. So we'll go ahead and set... I think Key2 is the better follow-up, because if you don't have a monster in hand to fuse with, Rahu doesn't do anything, and Key2 adds a monster and can also fuse. Now that we have Urgula engrave, we can go Urgula effect, target 5 mana, bottom deck the Urgula, return 5 mana to hand. And now we still have Pan plus 5 mana to fuse on the opponent's turn, and we have both traps, and we have Key2 for follow-up. So that is definitely like a more powerful end board, of course. But depending on your play style, you might not want to do that because maybe you're playing into something you don't want to play into. Depends on what the opposing non-engine is, or what kind of turn 0 plays they have, because that K9 package is obviously everywhere, or going to be everywhere at this point in the game, and also Vanquish Soul has plenty of turn 0 plays. Plus your opponent, if they're on Dracotail, might have their own turn 0 plays with it. So it's up to you what all you want to play into, how much you want to extend, and how low to the ground you want to keep it. But I personally think, basically the difference was having Grammel and the Key2 for follow-up or not. Either way, the hand was basically the same. Something else to keep in mind, while it's on my mind, is especially, like I said, with that problem before of the 2 traps being locked in the grave. Other than the traps, you only have 6 targets for setting spells and traps. 3 Rahu, 3 Key2. So why am I bringing this up? Your board breaker fusion materials, your Muller, your Urgula, and Pan, they do have to actually set to get their board breaking effect. So if you don't have a target in deck to set, they won't trigger. You won't get the spell pop, monster pop, or monster negate. And that's huge. Now, that's really only going to happen in like super long game states, but I've had games where like I might open 3 of these, and then I only have the 5 in deck between the other 3 copies and the 2 traps. And in a game state like that, especially if the 2 traps get stuck in grave, you can run out of targets pretty quick, and that can be a problem for this deck. So that's another reason why I think like the Tyrant tech is really good. But that's just me. You obviously can have like another supplemental engine that helps you, deal with that problem. But overall, I think that's basically all I wanted to touch on with this today. Like I said, I think it's a super powerful archetype. You guys might have been watching some of my Omega testing. I did have these proxies made up, and I've been, testing in paper as well. Personally, I'm really looking forward to it. I think if you like trap tricks, this is a deck you will really like as well. I think the decks feel very similar. I think their game plans are very similar. Dracotail just does it, like I said, in a way that is just modernized. It just feels like a 2025 trap tricks to me. And that's got me really excited. I really like this deck a lot, and I can't say enough nice things about it. I put it right up there with Memento as like one of the best decks Konami has ever designed. Really, I do. I hope you guys like this overview. If you like this kind of content from me, it's definitely something I could see myself doing more of in the future, even with decks that I don't necessarily play myself, just to kind of, give a bit more insight into what the decks are doing, what their game plan is, give a little bit of an analysis, just surface level stuff. I know I didn't get too deep in there today, but I don't really think there's a need to yet, especially when we're still a couple months out from the format. But if you did like that, just let me know, and I'll try to make more of it, because I think this kind of stuff's fun to talk about. I like theory crafting, deck building, and looking forward to the future. But anyways, I really appreciate you guys checking out the video. I will see you in the next one. Peace.